Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie, and I'm here with Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Guthrie.
And we have a very special guest today.
We do. I'm really excited. So I'm going to introduce our guest.
You're doing the introductions today.
Okay. This is Dr. Phillip Alvelda, and he's the CEO of a company called BrainWorks. And as we go through our conversation, I think you'll get to find out more about him. He's got quite an interesting background, and he's doing some amazing work. So that's why I'm excited. And Phillip, I don't know. I'm not assuming that you know a lot about our listeners. And sometimes, Guthrie, I feel like maybe we don't know a lot about our listeners, but we hear from them now and then. But they are, I think, a lot of them are, some of them are people who are designers, who are designing in this space that's an interaction between technology and human stuff. And so I think the work that you're doing, Phillip, is just such an interesting place of that intersection of technology and doing things for humans. That's why I wanted to have you on. And I'll just let everyone know that we have never talked before except for our sound check. So we are just getting to know each other. So anyway, welcome, Phillip.
Well, Susan and Guthrie, thanks for having me. Real pleasure to be joining you.
So I have, I think I have a bunch of stuff I want to talk about, and based on, just watching some videos of some of the work that you've been doing recently and so on. But I think what might really help to set this for our listeners who they may not know anything about you is to talk just for a minute at a real high level about some of the current work that you're working on right now, and then if you can do that first, then that'll be a great way for me to start asking some questions that I have.
Sure, I'm in pretty good practice because, as you know, growing a small technology startup company, you're always telling people about the great mission at hand and how you want to change the world. This one really is a labor of love for me. I began working in AI and making machines that think back at NASA, many decades ago in the 80s. And I reflect now that for me, this is the stars aligning, where the computers have gotten powerful enough, the data sets are interesting and complex and large enough, and we really can advance automation in a way that we can make intelligent machines that people can trust. And so BrainWorks, really, you can think of us as a foundry in the sense that, iron foundries, cast iron and make things. We're a brain foundry. So our official name is the BrainWorks Foundry Incorporated. And we're making intelligent machines that are more like the way human brains think, and applying them to solve really difficult global challenges that you needed really, up until this point, you needed really hands-on people to solve complex tasks. And so you can think of it as building more capable brains to solve more capable problems that so far we just haven't managed. And so that's a pretty exciting field for us. And part of the adventure, of course, was figuring out where we could have the most impact first. And the direction of application we chose was to think about how do we automate some of the really burdensome aspects of healthcare. And this, of course, is a difficult challenge in many nations now because, as you know, cost of healthcare is going up rapidly. But even more importantly, we've got an aging population. And there are several countries already, think Japan, Korea, Spain, Italy, they're already upside down in their population pyramid. So there aren't enough young people to take care of the elderly with increasing healthcare needs. And so we built BrainWorks to build these more intelligent machines, and we're applying them to automate as many of the difficult and burdensome aspects of healthcare as we can. And so that really is the mission. The first product and service that we're launching is a really interesting new system that completely automates the process of taking vital signs. And it does it in a really novel way that's enabled by the new AI technologies, where it used to be that you'd need to put a blood pressure cuff on and attach leads to someone to get their vital signs. But now we can use these new AI techniques to just use computer vision. So all you need to do is be in front of a camera that's connected to the internet in some way. And we can, by looking at really, really subtle changes of color and motion in your face and body, really begin to pull out biometric signs, heartbeat, respiration.
Yeah, you've got, and we'll put a link into, for instance, some of your videos. But I was watching one video where you just demonstrate this, and it's one of the things that I thought was fun about the video was it's just like, okay, yeah, I'll turn it on. Yeah, it's like no big deal. I'm just gonna turn this on, and like 3 seconds later, the camera of the smartphone is on your face, and there on the screen is, I think it was your heart rate, right?
Yeah,
just continuously measuring your heart rate as long as you were
cool.
somewhat facing the camera, and it happened really fast. Like there was data on the screen in it was like a few seconds at most, right?
Yeah, it's really remarkable. And the way to think of what we're building is, there's been a lot of advance. You hear a lot of technology discussion about deep learning networks and convolutional networks and the advance of AI. And so far, up until now, most of the systems have solved very narrow problems. We can, identify your face in a picture, or we can, pull out words from a stream of text that you're speaking. But now we're trying to solve problems that require, hands-on maneuvering. People have to be in the right place. And what are the new technologies that we can bring to bear in aggregate? So building a whole system that has many aspects of artificial intelligence that come together in a system to solve them. So it's really, I think the team at BrainWorks has done a phenomenal job in putting this first system together in a way that, it doesn't require your attention or the doctor's attention. And computers are getting really fast. You're right. So it's an impressive demo. And every quarter, we add new things that it detects. So since that demo, we've incorporated the respiration features, and we're working on, blood pressure and a broad range of other type of biomarkers and metrics that we're trying to measure to assess all sorts of diseases and deficits and injuries just by having a computer look at you.
All right, now I have a tangential question for you.
Sure.
So I teach one course each semester at a University of Wisconsin campus. I'm an adjunct professor there. And the course I'm teaching this semester is to computer science and user experience students. And it's all about design processes, design methods. And, we're doing a unit on design thinking and a unit on lean and a unit on agile and so on. Mm-hmm. So when I was thinking about like this product you just described, I'm curious about, what is the design process at BrainWorks for something like this? Like, do you follow a particular process? Is this just like you wake up in the morning with these ideas and you get a team working on it, or what? What's your process like?
That's a great question. In the very beginning, there was really just a challenge of the technology being so powerful and broadly applicable that it was difficult to figure out, how to define a product and a feature set that we would use and take to marketplace. So, the first design challenge was, as much a technology as it was a financial and business design challenge. Figuring out what the marketplace was and how much the people would pay and what were the unit costs and how would it scale a financial engine to grow a company. And so that really was the first design challenge. And then once we realized every time we turned around and started putting these models together, healthcare was just such a big number in every aspect. And there was such a pent need, and there were so few people, and it was just crying out for automation in ways that the whole industry hasn't even really appreciated the opportunities. Then the challenge was, all right, taking vital signs seems to be something that people take for granted. We've been doing it the same way for 50 years. How can we kind of reallocate all that manpower to more meaningful patient interactions, and can we automate that process? And so the first part was largely experimental. What kind of performance can we get? What kind of measurement precision can we get? What kind of what kind of cost of operations when we look at the processing and storage and bandwidth requirements to build the complete end-to-end cloud service. So those were kind of in the specification process. But once we realized, holy smokes, using these new AI techniques that look at how the eye works and look at how the visual cortex work and apply that to signal analytics, we realized we could pull out signals that no one had made visible in any way before. It was always lost in the noise, or lost while you were moving, or lost while the background lighting changes, or something like that. And so once we realized we could do that, we realized, oh my goodness, we can do just with a camera what it used to require $5,000 of equipment and a nurse and 15 minutes and a waiting room and so on. And we can do it anywhere with any camera. So you don't even have to come into the hospital clinic to be assessed at a professional, FDA certified level of accuracy. So then, of course, the design methodology for building it, there's a lot of flexibility when you're a tiny company. The key part of the design process, in my view, is hiring the right developers who need less management than budding technologists. And so, having started a few companies, I had a small army of supporters who'd built big infrastructure with me before, who were eager to kind of step in and build. So I'd say we do kind of a modified agile strategy that has a little bit more independence than usual, because we've got very, very capable designers.
Okay. All right. Now, here's another question. So you design, things like this, or this particular product, and as you kind of have just hinted at, it's really different. I mean, it's very disruptive in a positive way, right? We use that term these days to be positive, but it is a big change. And so, how in a field like healthcare, which we do a little bit of consulting in healthcare, and my sense is that talking about healthcare, it's such a huge industry and so many people involved, but so this is really a generalization. But my sense is that there are places and people in that industry that are just so excited about, disruption and new ways of doing things. But on the other hand, you have in many, many places just these, very long established behaviors that
entrenched.
People have about, entrenched is a good word, about how you do this, right? And so what is that? I mean, that must be like a whole nother piece to what you're trying to do is, okay, how do we get this out there in the world and get the humans, right, to want to go this route?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the kind of canonical technology challenge. Like, you want to invent something that makes the world better, but the world seems so darn resistant. When you want to bring about these changes. And there are certain industries, like one of my previous companies, we did a lot of work with the telecom giants. So the AT&Ts and Verizons of the world, and big infrastructure companies, big capital expenditures, armies of staff, decades of practice and process and how they do things. And it's hard. It's hard in all of those. And medicine, I think, and healthcare in general, is certainly one of those areas where very long entrenched practices have taken root. But what I find is that with careful product design and a good business engagement strategy to figure out how do you have representatives and kind of make the market aware of you, you can find that in the healthcare industry, there are people that are very, very interested in doing things that really improve the patient experience and really, improve the doctor's ability to, offer better care. And if you can build a product that is easily integrable or that replaces an old function wholesale, that's much easier than offering something that is part of a solution that needs to be fit into a bigger operation. And so this is why the vital sign taking system was actually a great candidate, because we could completely replace the old school way of doing things and have massive advantages, in operations and number of people that you need to do it, but also in important areas that are important to healthcare of the patient. So, for example, there's a bunch of conditions where you don't really want to touch the patient or where touching damages them. So, think about patients in a burn ward who have skin that has sloughed off. You can't really touch them or fasten things to them, but you still want to be able to monitor them. Similarly, for infants in the neonatal intensive care, you get a child in the NICU. It's got very, very sensitive skin. Generally, you've got to strap things to it that damage the skin while you're doing the measurement. The kid's squirmy and the leads pop off and all the alarms go a few times a day and the nurses all rush in like it's an emergency, and nope, just the leads popping off again. But they can't ignore it because it might actually be an emergency. So there's all sorts of things like that, in the beginning of life, certainly all the way in hospice where, the elderly have very fragile skin and they don't really want to be strapped to the beds, but you want to be able to see how they're doing. So it afforded such a monumental quantum leap in the quality and range of care just within the hospitals that there was huge demand for it. And then when we were able to show that, and you could expand care in the home, that was kind of a real clincher.
Yeah.
These are the type of advantages that we tout in the marketing, and we'll see how effective it is.
Yeah. Hey, Guthrie, I wanted to mention to you because, obviously Philip and I are just like talking away at
I got a list of questions.
Hour,
Don't worry. I
have
questions
more questions too, but why don't you jump in with some, Guthrie?
Okay. So all right, Philip, I'll let you choose. I got a privacy question and I got an AI question. Which one do you want?
Well, let's do them both, but happy to start with either one. AI is fine. Go into privacy, whatever you feel like.
Okay, we'll start with AI. So, I am a little curious. I remember years and years and years and years ago, I used to play SimCity 1,000 years ago, and you would play against the quote AI, and you were one team and they were the other, or Civ 4 or whatever the game was. But of course it wasn't really AI. They called it AI, but it was really just a glorified system of like if then statements.
Yes.
And AI is such a buzzword. Anything Silicon Valley, we go to a lot of conferences and it's AI this and it's AI that. Now it sounds like what you're doing is actually sort of the AI neural network stuff. But a lot of, in my experience so far, a lot of what companies are calling AI, at least when it comes to interacting with a person, really is the same sort of if-then statements, like a chatbot would be a good example. A lot of chatbots saying that they have AI, and it's really if they mention, I need to email someone, and email's in the keyword. If email, then do this, a branch of, text.
Yeah, I mean, we call that, for the Alexa and Siri type application, we call that intention mapping. Where can the software determine your intention, and then based on that intention, look up a sequence of steps that it will follow, to satisfy that intention. And you're right, there's huge foment about, is it AI, is it not?
I was just curious what, like, if you had to be, you're on the cutting edge of it. So I've made you the grammar czar. And so you now have the full authority of backing of the United States government to determine what is actually, how you define things. So how would you define what is and isn't AI?
Well, to me, there's a lot of different ways you can look at, analyze, think about intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you want to build a synthetic system, you want to engineer something to act intelligently. There are things that can intelligently avoid light in a little mouse robot. And so you're embodying some finite bit of intelligence into the thing that attracts or avoids light. And that was intelligence that was enabled in bacteria and algae swimming in the ocean, millions of years ago.
Yeah.
And no one would call a tiny little algae intelligent on the level of a human. So I try to think of the idea of intelligence as a little more compartmentalized and component driven. And the types of systems we're trying to build more and more intelligence with brains that have more and more capability to do more and more complicated things. Would we say, oh, yes, that is a general AI robot? No, we're not there yet. Is it using elements of AI to solve specific problems in ways that, kind of mimic or recall the ways humans approach them? Yes, that's functional AI, but it's not necessarily general in the sense that you can give it any problem and it will adapt and learn to do that. So I think the idea of general intelligence is that it has to embody the general operating rules of the universe, the environment that it works in particular, be able to kind of observe things that are happening and generalize what should be done in the future based on what went well in the past, and avoid those things, of course, that didn't go so well. So to me, that's a general AI description. We're nowhere close to building systems like that as an entire industry, much less any individual company. Mm-hmm. But for us, we think that we can make meaningful steps in that direction by going from very narrow problems, like finding a face, to building a system that, yes, it can find a face, but it can also look at you and see how you're doing and how you're feeling and develop a representation of that where, you can have some sort of emotional engagement with the chatbot that's not just a question and response thing. It can have its own attitudes and personality. It can have a model of you and your personality, and you can make richer interactions between them. So that, we're definitely on our way to doing. But a general problem solver, no, that's still, a decade, 2, maybe 3 in the future.
Susan, when did you write your book on speech interfaces?
Oh, it's on my shelf here somewhere. I think it was like 1999.
Okay, so back in 99, she wrote a book that was way too large. That's even bigger than my book.
I don't think so. It was a pretty big book.
Yeah. So she wrote a book about computer speech interfaces with humans. And I think back in 99, if you would have said, okay, we have this computer program that can almost in near real time translate what any human is saying into text, that would be like this amazing Jetsons futuristic whatever. But to me, it feels like there has been some sort of Pandora's box, because once a couple companies, Google being one, sort of figured out the way of which you do speech to text or speech to something, you're turning the sound waves into something a computer program can deal with. It seems that it's now a pretty easy problem, because since Google did it decently, or a couple other smaller specialized companies did it decently a couple years ago, within a couple years it was Apple, and it was Amazon, and it was Huawei, and it was Samsung, and it doesn't seem, all these big companies, okay, like 2 years of we'll throw some money behind it. We have some decent software that can now sort of understand what people are saying, and it hasn't necessarily been surprising to me, because every generation of new neural network hardware is like a 10x tensor core increase or whatever. But you're on the other side of the curtain.
Yeah.
Are these problems are there certain problems that, so the person walking around the street, when they see something that would be, quote, AI-ish or somewhat intelligent. It feels like magic. Are there some problems that are like, yeah, we kind of know how to do this now? Like, we feed it a bunch of data and, we basically know the model to solve this problem pretty easily? Or is like every time a Huawei, getting text-to-speech is its own like miracle of engineering? Like how hard is this stuff really these days?
It's really hard. It's
Okay.
really hard because I think the thing that people kind of often fail to appreciate when you think about AI and things that are automated, it's easy to ask your Alexa, hey, turn on the TV or turn the lights down or
Sure.
things like that, and deceive yourself into giving the Alexa unit the anthropomorphic characteristics of understanding what you're saying. Okay, and here I'm going to make a distinction between identifying what you're saying. So the person said these words, and understanding what those words meant.
Right.
So all Alexa has is a table that says if you say turn down the lights in any kind of order like that, and in fact, my Alexa in the background just turned on.
A-L.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alexa, shut up.
You gotta spell it out.
That's too funny. When you can deceive yourself into thinking that it has some knowledge of what those words mean, and it has no idea what a light is,
Right.
or what it means to say turn it down. You and I understand that means if I have a switch, I reach over and I turn the switch to lower the lights level, intensity levels. But the AI devices don't have any of that embedded knowledge. I'll give you an example of where the magic failed me, and I was pushing it, and for me this was this is a great story. I had bought a Tesla in California, and I was driving it across the country specifically to test the autopilot function, which is one of the really widely touted AI capabilities. So the self-driving capabilities of the Tesla Model 3. And when you fire it up, and you read the user's manual, it has all these warnings about, only use it under good conditions on straight roads, no late traffic. And I ignored all of those, with the intent to see, where it failed. And of course, it was a little bit of a white knuckle ride for me. As you're letting the car drive, you're still, hovering over it like a mother with her first toddler.
Data software, huh?
Yeah. So and of course, I'm testing it in all these conditions. And, I have to say that by and large, it was really quite amazing. And 99% of the 3,700 mile journey, kind of down through the southeast and then up the coast, it did everything that I asked it to, even though I ignored most of the warnings. But there were two failures in particular that were really interesting. And one was kind of rush hour traffic at about 7 p.m. Dallas, Fort Worth, kind of the land of the concrete freeways. It was all under construction. It was raining. It was dark. And there was rush hour. It wasn't quite bumper to bumper because it was starting to loosen up. So we were going about 50 miles an hour. Rain everywhere, potholes. The car's doing great. I've got these giant 18-wheelers next to me, and I'm like terrified, but it's still doing it. And then, just from nowhere, for no apparent reason whatsoever, the car just goes into an emergency brake. So I'm thrown up against the alarms are beeping, and take over. And I'm like, take over, geez, what are you doing? And so I step on the gas immediately, but the car had gone from like 55 miles an hour down to about 15.
Wow.
In half a second, and then I accelerated back up to the freeway track. It was an emergency, like if something was going to run into the car, kind of crash brake. So I looked in my rearview mirror, and it was just completely a matter of luck that there wasn't someone behind me, because they almost would have rear-ended me.
Right.
And then as my adrenaline started to abate, and my breathing calmed, and I was kind of running through my head, well, what exactly happened there? What caused the car to freak out for no apparent reason? And I realized that a moment before, an 18-wheeler had gone, traveling slightly faster than my autopilot, engagement was going, past the car on the left side in the neighboring lane, and it splashed a big sheet of water up over towards the car. And so, in a sense, the autopilot did exactly what it was supposed to do. It detected that something big was coming at the car.
Right.
Don't hit it. But what it didn't have was kind of the intrinsic knowledge that I had growing up in the world, that when water splashes onto your car that weighs a couple tons, it's not a big deal and it's not important. But it meant that, I needed to know what water was, and that it's not dangerous if it hits you. And, by the way, it's raining now, so you could expect water to be hitting you. It'd be a surprise. So, you think of kind of the knowledge of materials that has nothing to do with what you would imagine would be a driving challenge to begin with. So it had the sensors, it had the identification, it had the collision detection, but it didn't have kind of the basic meaning of how the world is structured that I take for granted completely. So for me, that was a classic moment where, the magic of AI that seemed to be doing everything, it didn't quite meet the human standard.
Yeah, interesting.
I think driverless cars tech is really, really hard. I think I think some of it is perhaps a little easier these days, but I think because people, that's like the first, it's like Alexa and driverless cars are like the first things people jump to. And I think driverless car tech is really, really hard, personally.
Yeah, but I wish they'd hurry up because I want it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it is really remarkable. And when you start to look at the statistics, the driverless car technology is already better than humans from a statistical and accident avoidance perspective. It doesn't get tired. Fleet doesn't text, or maybe it texts, but it can do that and drive at the same time. So yeah, it's some of the stats are really quite interesting now. There's arguments that it's like somewhere between 5 and 9 times safer than the average driver.
Yeah.
But really
I'm an economist, so I know all about car fatality statistics. And drives me bonkers.
That's a little morbid.
Yes, the dismal
all right,
science.
Guthrie, what was your privacy question?
All right. So I want to talk today briefly about the stethoscope.
Okay.
The stethoscope is a technology that allows that all the computation, if you want to call it that, is done completely offline, in-house, by whoever's using it. And there's sort of ultimate privacy with a stethoscope. That is to say, the doctor and the stethoscope is getting information from the patient, but it's not being processed anywhere else except in the room. And by it, obviously, it's impossible for that information to really be processed by anyone else because it's a stethoscope. As you get more and more sophisticated, and healthcare is sort of the ultimate example because privacy is, by law, there's a lot of privacy.
We probably should have told Philip that in addition to being an economist, you're also a licensed attorney in the state of Illinois. So with a specialty in healthcare. So okay, keep going, Guthrie.
So I am curious. I mean, 5 years ago, I think the general public had a lot more trust in technology. 5 years before that, they had even more trust, probably. And because of the nature of processing data, I mean, I know some companies are getting to the point where, Apple says they do all the neural network processing locally on the device and they don't ship any data out. But I think for a lot of people, that sort of magic is now, or the trust has been eroded. I have a number of friends, my age, not, millennial ages, I'm in the millennial group, who will never live, do not want to live with anyone who has any sort of Alexa device because in their home because of privacy issues. Okay, so that was a very long-winded, convoluted.
And your question is.
And my question is, as we offload more and more, especially in healthcare, of the potential diagnostic tools and the potential technology solutions, what are some of the ways that the industry, can help ensure that make people feel better that their privacy is actually being protected? Now, again, I'm an economist. I know that it's very easy for the medical records to be stolen by by a hacker, and all the stethoscope data is then stolen anyways. So I understand the reality of it, but especially when it comes to perception, a device that's tracking your heart rate from a phone, that may cause squeamishness with people.
Yeah, that's a genuine concern and an important topic area. But it's interesting to note how the privacy standards are evolving. I'll give you kind of an interesting example as kind of a teaser for the discussion. When we began this project, and we were working with hospitals to figure out, how would we design the data flow and where do they want the data kept. A few years ago, the general sense was we don't trust this newfangled cloud thing that everyone seems to be able to get to from wherever they are. We'd rather store all the data on, a local machine in the hospital. And so, we built some prototype machines, with that requirement in mind. But then as we approached some of our field validation trials with the formal product, we said, all right, we're ready to go. Here's how we've designed the system. This is our, independent review board protocol for approval. And they said, whoa. You're storing all the data on premises in the hospital. We don't want you to do that. Wait a second. Wasn't that one of the requirements a few months ago? They said, yes, up until the point where we had, one of the doctor's laptops stolen, that had a bunch of medical records on it, and then we got the $multi-million fine. So we don't want to do that. And I think, one of the realizations is, of course, the cloud security technologies have really come quite a long way in the last few years, and driven in part by GDPR and HIPAA compliance regulations that have now extended in the technology fields. And I think that having done that, there's been a lot of progress, and you're not seeing a lot of data breaches by the types of industries, or in the types of industries where you've got the extreme HIPAA compliance requirements of security and intrusion detection and all those things that are a little bit more stringent than the general commercial standard. So I think that is one thing that should give people a little bit of comfort. But the other is that I think that in this transition to the bigger cloud systems, you're now not as subject as you used to be to kind of individual points of weakness from untrained users, or just users that are overworked and don't have the time to reset their password every couple months, or whatever the change requirement is. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've seen, even in high security government installations saying, God, I forgot my password. What month is it? Oh yes, it's like screw you, 9/14. I'll just change the 9/14 to the latest date when I have to, update my password. Because they don't want to comply with the annoyance and the trouble of the security requirements. So I think that is an important transition. But I think that, part of what we're seeing is that there's also an increasing awareness that your privacy, while it can help you, it can hurt others. And I think that if you look at the way AI advances in the medical field in particular, it's utterly dependent on aggregating large masses of data that help us characterize, how do you define, detect, and understand the progress of disease and injury and recovery and rehabilitation. And if we don't have that data, we can't build systems to improve it. I mean, your stethoscope example is a great one, because as long as it's one doctor and it's the only one that's heard it, you're subject to, is that a good doctor or not? Or even in developing countries, do you have a doctor nearby? And if you've got a smartphone that can detect your heartbeat, and it can be serviced automatically or from a doctor far away. And so you no longer have the access restrictions or the training requirements locally that you used to have with the individual doctor and the stethoscope. But to make that work, we needed to collect, literally thousands of traces of heartbeats and respiration patterns, and use that to train our AI. And if people weren't willing to share that in some capacity, we would never have been able to build a system to kind of upgrade what's possible.
Right.
Okay, I have another question. Guthrie, you can, I'll give you a little break, and then you can come back with more questions. Phillip, we have clients who are, we do work in the intersection of behavioral science and design, and we have clients who are very interested in, neural measurements of their products. So, they want to know, they'd like to, they want to use heart rate or respiration, EEG and so on, to see if they can get some indication of amount of engagement with whatever the product is that someone is using. And so what I can imagine that there even might be people listening to us, to this episode, and saying, oh, this is cool. I want to use this to measure the heart rate while people are watching our, video that we put together, and see when they're engaged and when they're not engaged. Which, there's right now out in the market, there are things that will measure heart rate, but I don't know, that anybody from a neuromarketing point of view has what you have, which is they're measuring heart rate from the smartphone looking at their face. So, how do you feel about the technologies you're developing being used in ways that were not what you intended, or perhaps not what you initially intended? Is it do you see, BrainWorks kind of opening up and saying, absolutely, yeah, this is great. The technology can be used here, 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 and here. Or are you like, wait, guys, we wanted, we're trying to do this to make these big improvements in critical areas like healthcare, and we're not necessarily trying to make company X over here, make a more effective Super Bowl ad.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you've asked it gently without even implying more nefarious usage, even farther on the other side of that double-edged sword, right? I think it's absolutely true that these new technologies are unbelievably powerful and can be used for good or ill. I mean, one of the examples I gave in a recent presentation was that the same facial recognition technology that we use in our vital sign monitoring system, it's intended to notice when you individually, you in particular, walk in front of the camera, and then record the vital signs it measures to your personal health record. So that's a nice benign application that's intended to watch over your health for your own benefit. And it's the same kind of technology that certain oppressive governments are using to identify people in the streets that are protesting and ensure that their social credit score is impacted to limit their travel and communication. So healthcare and advancement in your personal health and public good on one side versus oppression. So there's really a wide range of applications. So I'd say that from our perspective at BrainWorks, we're taking the position that we want to be responsible for the responsible use of our platforms. And we've turned away a good amount of business where we've been approached by applications for physical security. We've been asked, can you tell if someone has an elevated set of vital signs, heart rate and breathing, that doesn't correspond to how active they are physically, where we can get our security personnel to intercept them before they get through a checkpoint of some sort. So we've refused that kind of work. We've been asked by insurance companies, can you help us determine whether someone's lying to us, while they're making an application, by looking at their expressions and vital signs at the same time, while they're filling out our online ad, for service. And we'd like to extract more money from premium customers and reject service from poor customers. So these are all things that we have decided are not in the public benefit, and the morals of our company and how we operate and what we choose to do business with. We will not support those applications. So I think that our perspective is a little bit different than some of the big platform developers, where they're open sourcing the platform and saying, hey, anyone come use it. We're actually working with problems, with partners to solve very specific problems. We're using our platform and building the kind of the industry vertical to solve a big problem. So in that sense, it's a little bit more of a hands-on stewardship from our perspective to make sure that the uses are responsible.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right.
Yeah.
Guthrie, back to you.
Yeah. Someone. It's great that you are not going to do that, but someone is going to develop that. Unfortunately.
Most likely.
Yeah.
And people are. You do have the social credit score. Most people aren't even aware. I mean, this is one of the conversations I think you guys could really elevate and should. Is that you came up with a couple of high-flying examples of AI that's obvious and in front of you, and that people marvel at. But I think one of the hidden issues is really the hidden AI. The AI is already all around you. It's already manipulating what you see and what you don't see. What advertisements are presented to you? What shows are you presented that you're likely to like? Controlling your viewing habits. When you're purchasing something online, how are you presented different products? How are they priced? There's already, huge bits of AI arrayed against you that most people aren't even aware of. One of the great examples that I think, I don't know if you followed Tristan Harris and his whole campaign about being a former Facebook front-end designer. Yeah. Where he was one of the people that was charged with, making the interface that would be more appealing so people would use it more. And after a while, he left the company and then became a big campaigner. And the way he would phrase it, and I'd refer you to his Twitter stream and presentations. He's got a TEDx presentation, I believe. Is that when you press that big blue F button on the Facebook app, what you're doing is you're turning on one of the world's largest artificial intelligence systems with one express purpose, and that is to keep you watching advertisement for as long as possible to maximize the ad revenue. And just like Gary Kasparov lost to Big Blue, and AlphaGo, beat the Go master from China or Japan, Lee Sedol. You will lose against a giant supercomputer. So you have a system that is controlling your attention with an AI system that's not even exposed to you. And it's tuning what you're shown, how often you're shown it, how the likes are distributed, what friends you hear from, what friends you don't. How do you keep scrolling? Oh, and by the way, when you log off, it also sends you messages and notifications to try and get you to come back. And so this has been exposed now to work so well that especially younger children, think 8 to 14 or 15, where their executive function is just developing, they're completely susceptible to the dopamine hit of these design strategies. And so that is a massive AI that's arrayed against you to seize and hold your attention.
Now, see, Guthrie, you think I'm pessimistic?
Oh no, I think both of you are realistic.
Yeah.
Well,
it's so hard too, because and Philip, we give a talk on the future of human technology interaction, and we kind of debate about how dark to go, and I tend to be pessimistic and dark. But I think the other thing that's kind of difficult in talking about this is the sense of helplessness about it. Like, okay, so this isn't good, and it's happening, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's like,
Yeah, I'm not that pessimistic. I think that, I would say two things to hearten you. One, yes, there are malign uses of these technologies, but there's also, it's important to realize how powerful they are and what the prospect for improvement might be. And if you think of our, number one challenge today on Earth, it's easy to kind of get obsessed with, what appears in the daily news as bad news. But most of the metrics that are important for the human condition, so poverty, disease, hunger, drought, and availability of clean water, all of those metrics are improving pretty drastically on a regular basis. And I think that we have reached a point with renewable energy, and we've reached a point with the cultivation of food, where we now have more than the whole entire world needs. And the challenge that we have now is not so much, what is the basic technology and our capability to create all of these things, but how can we be more efficient in distributing them and managing them? And if we can solve those, we genuinely have at hand the prospect of, not requiring money anymore for things like energy and food, because there's plenty for everyone. I would throw healthcare into that mix as well, although that's probably a little bit farther down the road. But in that sense, the single biggest, kind of foundational tool that we have to address these problems is the artificial intelligence technology that allows us to automate it and massively reduce the cost for everything and make everything more efficient and accessible. So to me, I think, this is a super exciting era. And one of the reasons why we started BrainWorks was we saw that technology as being so fundamental to bringing about positive world change that we wanted to take up that mantle and that mission.
Yeah. So is there anything you can tell us about what's coming down the pike and what's the next thing that you're working on?
Yeah, well, for us, we're trying to build systems that, every quarter we can detect more disease and more injury just by looking at you. And not only can we detect it, but we can build the systems to diagnose and then predict trends and help you plan interventions in such a way that, you have it in your pocket with a phone and a webcam and a smart TV in your home, a system where you can refer to a virtual doctor with the best training, the best knowledge, the best experience, and the best ability to see what's wrong with you in a way that was completely invisible in the past. So, think of a next generation of virtual doctors and virtual nurses that are accessible wherever you are, and however poor you might be, or whatever disease you might have, that can help you understand it and manage it. And even more, these things that can help you from a day-to-day basis long before you have any kind of critical health issue to maintain your health and fitness, and maybe move us a little way away from kind of reactive care of crises to preventive health maintenance.
Yeah, it's great. It's fascinating. So if people want to find out more about BrainWorks, you want to tell us, and we'll also link to stuff when we talk about this. But where should they go?
Yeah, it's very easy. Just go to brainworks.ai. That is our base website, and click around. There's a couple of intro videos and presentations, and there's a page describing the healthcare technologies and the ambient biometric sensing, and of course, we've got our job postings. We are hiring.
Great. What kinds of positions are you looking for?
Well, to start with, we're looking mostly for software developers that have some sort of interest in applying machine learning and artificial intelligence to solving difficult problems.
Mm-hmm.
But not just the computer science types. We're looking for all the technical disciplines, electrical, engineering, physics, math, neuroscience, biology, people that understand how the brain works, cognitive psychology. All of those are really interesting kind of contributors, I think, to this mission. And then, of course, we're looking for broader executives to help us grow the company and interface with and sell into and help transform the healthcare industry. So it's we got a little bit of a tiger by the tail. We're riding, we're hanging on as tight as we can, and we're growing. So would love to have partners, hospitals that think they could benefit, clinics, elder care, telemedicine groups. These are all, important parts of our ecosystem.
Great. Hey, thanks so much for the conversation. Guthrie, you probably didn't even get half of your questions you got to bring up, so sorry about that. But it's been great. We really appreciate your coming on to talk to us, Phil.
My pleasure.
All right. So this is Dr. Phillip Alvelda, brainworks.ai. Guthrie, if people want to get hold of us, how do they do that?
You can email info@theteamw.com.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.